All right, everybody, it is 2 o'clock on the nose, so I'm going to get started. I am also making sure to record this session. So if any of your team members are not on that want to be seeing this, or if you know that your colleagues are not in attendance today from other networks, just know that this is being recorded and I will share out these slides at the end of the presentation, along with a few other exciting things. So our agenda today is that we're going to review completing eGMS requirements. We're going to do some eligibility reminders and clarifications. We're going to review our attendance trackers, and we're going to review some best practices from our planning documents. So before I get started into eGMS, some of you may have noticed that eGMS is not yet updated with the birth to 3 budget or funding yet. We're still waiting to hear from our internal team on what exact day that's going to be released. We do apologize that that did not come out on July 1st like we had thought. That information was supposed to be true, and we are pushing as much as we can to make sure that that is out as soon as possible. However, that being said, you can still go in and complete your the things that we're going to review today. So in order to get access to your funding in eGMS, you're going to log in as you normally would, and you're going to view this this bar at the top that says LEA Central Data and click Open. Once you get to that point, you're going to see a bunch of different boxes come up. Contact information and assurances are the two most important ones for our purposes today. When you click on the purple highlighted boxes, you will get to your early childhood program contact that needs to be completed for your early childhood grants. So that's going to be the person that is completing those applications, including birth to 3 seats, Ready Start Network, lead agency, community recovery grant, etc. And if your lead agency is also a CCR and R, you're going to also need to do the CCR contact information here as well. To get to the assurances, similar, you click the purple boxes, you first click assurances, then competitive program assurances, then PDG assurances, then B-3 seats assurances. To get to this point, you will also do your Ready Start Network, your family childcare pilot if you have it, your PDG, etc. You can also get to your COVID-19 assurances here, etc. But this is for our purposes today, again, the birth to 3 seats. This is the quick path that you'll want to follow in order to get to your assurances. You'll click this box to make sure that you are telling eGMS that you've read the assurances carefully, you are agreeing to them. And if you have any questions about what's involved in that, you could reach out to me, but they should be pretty straightforward and things that you already know and understand due to the application of this pilot. So once you've done that, you should be able to go back in and see under discretionary grant, birth to 3 seats, and this list here. So when you do that, the status will not say final approved because you haven't completed your budget yet. It'll say not yet started. And then to begin your budget, you'll click open here. Many of you have gone through this process before, so forgive me if I'm repeating something that you already know, but I do know that many of us this may be our first time completing a grant like this. So I just want to be as explicit as possible. A few things once we get into the budget, you're going to see that there's funding sources from different places. One is PDG, one is CURSA, one is ARPA, and you might also see that, and I'll get to this in a second, that there is rollover funds from previous years if you are a participant in year 1 and you had rollover funds. So I'm going to talk about that in a second. But as you're completing your budget, you want to make sure that you're super clear in this column here where it says fund, which funding source you are pulling from. And as we mentioned in your allocation notifications back in, I think, April or May, you're going to be receiving a second dose, for lack of a better phrase, of your PDG funding in December. So we ask that you prioritize your funding on things that will be spent soon, such as for those of you who may be purchasing some initial curriculum or initial furniture for expanding a classroom. If you know that you're going to make that purchase really, really soon in this fiscal year, put that under your PDG funds in your budget line. And so then you're going to see here at the top where how much of each funding source you have. Make sure that you're spending out so that once you complete the budget, you'll be zeroed out. You'll have your entire budget completed. And also another component is to make sure that you're completing individual budget lines for each center with which you are partnering. I know it's a little tedious, especially for those of you who have a lot of centers participating, but it is important for us transparency wise to make sure that we're seeing exactly how much money is flowing into which center, et cetera. So just make sure that when you and your team sit down to do this, you take the time to be really meticulous, have a budget line for each center, and clarity on what exactly you are directing those centers to spend those funds, or how much they're getting and what the source of those funds are. So for example, if a center is serving to infants, you're going to say, Unicorn's Magical Center to infants at rate of $10,000, and you'll put that super clearly in this budget line. I've also linked here, which you had in your planning documents, the detailed object code and education improvement categories for the object codes here and for the EIC over here.
Can I just jump in real quick, Devin?
Yes, please, Lizzie. Thank you so much.
Just want to also say, so it's important when you're budgeting to budget PDG funding first, but also just keep in mind that when you're requesting reimbursement, I can definitely see a world in which you've got the same item budgeted, some with PDG funds, some with CURSA money. And so just keep in mind that it's also important when you're requesting reimbursement that you're drawing down those PDG funds first, especially if this is your second year participating in the birth to 3 seats, because anything that has rolled over is going to be unavailable for you and for the department come December if it's not spent or drawn down. So just please, I'm sorry in advance for the number of emails you're going to receive from the department reminding you about this, but we've got a lot of PDG dollars to spend and to draw down. So just want to let you know we will be reminding you of that frequently, but just keep in mind, budget anything you plan to spend in the fall semester with PDG dollars and draw it down. And we really appreciate it. Thanks.
Thanks so much, Lizzie. Really great reminder. So as Lizzie mentioned, the rollover funds will roll over for fall 2021. However, it will expire by December 30th, 2021. So please just, like Lizzie said, make sure that you're prioritizing those dollars first so that nothing gets left on the table. I know that all of us want to make sure that every dollar gets spent for the betterment of children. And that is one easy way to make sure that you're, on top of every element of this budget. Moving on, so going back to eGMS, once you've completed in that consolidated budget detail button, once you've completed your budget and quote unquote spent all your funds in your budget, you'll need to run a consistency check, and that's just going to make sure internally on that side that everything is lined up, you filled in every box that needs to be filled in, etc. And then you'll click submit, which is, if you can pretend to imagine it, it's down here on the screen. If you're not ready to submit, you can also lock or unlock the application as needed. But ideally, you'll be doing this all in one shot. So after you submit, if you're curious on where your budget is in the review process, on that same page, on your main page, when you're looking at all of the different grants that you see, you'll see your B-3 seats. You can click this button titled Review Summary. And on the next page, you'll see this list down here that will show you who is going to be looking at it. Now, this is just an example. So for us, like for here where it says Amanda Colon, you'll likely see my name. But you're going to see exactly where in the process it is here at status and status date. So especially since we are a little bit further behind than we would have liked to be with our start date not hitting exactly at July 1. If you are feeling the urgency of getting this budget approved, you can click this button after you've submitted your budget to see where in the LDOE world it is. And if for whatever reason you have a question on the status of the review, or why there's a delay somewhere, or if there was feedback given that you're not understanding, you can always reach out to me. All right, that's all I have about eGMS. Before I move on, I just want to make sure that there are no questions about this process. So I'm going to open it up. If you want to pop off mute and ask a question or type it into the chat box, we'll take just a minute or two to open it up for questions.
Hey, Devin, it's Lee. I have a quick question.
Hey, Lee, go ahead.
So if you go back a couple slides, it was the slide that you were saying enter each site individually. When you were saying that, you were meaning like in this box for expenditure description itemization, each site goes in there, not like each site gets a whole nother budget line, right?
Each site gets a whole budget line, correct.
Okay.
Yeah, that's something that we wanted to happen last year. It wasn't clear in our feedback originally. By the time that we understood it on all ends internally, it was a lot of y'all had gotten your budget submitted and approved already. But for this year, yes, you would want, like, you have ABC learning in one line, Little Unicorns Magical Playground in the next line, Little Dragons Magical Playground in the following line. So like each individual center. So it is, especially for folks like you at UBR and Jefferson and Rapides, are going to have a lot of lines, unfortunately, but it is a best practice for us to make sure that that you and your centers are protected on all ends of fiscal responsibility.
Okay, and so another quick point, and that's because we're in between budget specialists right now. So I'm gonna be doing
that's good.
The best that I can. So when I'm looking at the different funding sources, so like let's say I get to a place and one site might need two different funding sources, would that site then I split and say, hey, a 500,000 of this will go on this line for this site for this B3 seats PDG, and the other 20,000 for another line with that same site? Is that?
Yep.
Okay.
That makes total sense. Yep, for sure.
Right. Thank you.
Great. Yes, thank you, Lee. Great questions. All right, I don't see anything in the chat box and I'm hearing none, but we will have some time for discussion at the end. So if you do have questions that aren't quite formulated yet, there will be time to discuss. So now we're going to talk about some eligibility reminders. Many of you have asked me a lot of really great questions since our first webinar back in June, and I wanted to take a couple of minutes to go over some of those frequently asked questions. And again, I'm going to add a little space at the end of this to answer any questions that you have that these might conjure up that you didn't have prior to this moment. So this is just a reminder. This is the same slide that you saw in our first webinar, that the eligibility requirements for birth to 3 seats are unique to this program. However, there is as much alignment as we could with LA4 and or CCAP to make sure that it is inclusive of families and really supporting getting birth to 3-year-old children into these seats. So the main components of what you'll need is your verification of birth date and immunization records. That's true for any child in any seat, anywhere. The income eligibility of 200% of the federal poverty level. That is the same as LA4. We've talked about how to verify that income eligibility through earned and unearned income by looking at their work or training confirmation, or if they're actively seeking employment. And then lastly, families in temporary living arrangements due to loss of housing or economic hardship are experiencing homelessness, and those families are categorically eligible along with children in foster care. And when we say categorically eligible, we mean those children should be enrolled immediately. They're eligible for the full 12 months. And families experiencing homelessness only need to complete the McKinney-Vento form, which we talked about in our webinar. Each network has a McKinney-Vento liaison, and I'm going to do a little bit more clarification in a couple slides about the documentation for families experiencing homelessness. It's this slide right here. So it was unclear in our first webinar, and I apologize for that, whether or not families who are experiencing homelessness need to complete additional forms beyond the McKinney-Vento form. This is your new bottom line. They do not need to complete anything other than that McKinney-Vento form through your liaison. That is the only thing that they need in order to show eligibility for the full 12 months. If you have any questions about that, definitely reach out to me or hold it till the end of this section of our webinar today. But I just want to make it super clear, only McKinney-Vento form, families experiencing homelessness, categorically eligible, full 12 months. So another component of this, as you're experiencing kind of the challenges of working with families, teaching them what some of these things are that they may not know that, you know, contribute to an overall income, or things that they didn't, that they aren't as frequently receiving, or things that they do know that they have, but may not have otherwise known that it contributed to their overall income. One thing that I want to preface all of this by saying is that family information is all self-reported. You are not responsible for being a detective and tracking down any information. You are more than welcome to help families gather information as much as you would like and are capable. But you are not, like I said, a detective in trying to decide whether what a family is reporting is the most accurate picture of their fiscal life. This means that the family is the owner of responsibility for providing true and accurate information, and your responsibility is taking that true and accurate information and deciding whether or not that true and accurate information makes them eligible for this pilot. So, for example, you're responsible for confirming to the best of your ability a family's employment or schooling status. This could include calling the employer, the training program, the school, etc. And if they say that they are not employed, at all, you are not responsible for calling every employer in your parish and just to make sure that they're telling you the truth by any means. That's definitely, obviously an exaggeration. And if a family claims or does not claim unearned income, you take them at their word. If they provide you inaccurate information, the culpability lands on the family, not on the lead agency. Families in their, yearly taxes will be audited in, in that process, and making sure that they're, not through the department, but there's other accountability measures on their own. And so what I don't want for you all to feel is this like weight or burden on whether or not you are deciding if the family is telling you the truth. You just take them at their word, you take a deep breath, you make the decision based on what is given to you. So you might have a situation also where, it might be a single parent and you're thinking, well, they may or may not have child support. I've seen situations like this and they probably do. You are more than welcome to ask them if they receive child support formally or informally through a court, through a amicable agreement between the other partner. If they tell you no, you've done your due diligence and that's all that you need to do. So again, I hope that me saying this gives you a bit of a sigh of relief. I know that there's a lot of documentation, there's a lot of questions that you want to ask. So again, the responsibility is on the family to provide you with true and accurate information. Okay, so again, this is a refresher slide of what the different types of unearned income are. You definitely should ask the family members if they have any of these examples, because unearned income, that phrase is a LDOE specific phrase. It's not one that they are naturally going to think, oh yeah, my unearned income is my alimony, so ask them specifically for unemployment, for retirement, for alimony, etc. And all of these are calculated in the total income. And depending on the frequency of pay, whether it's their pay statement, whether it's their unearned income, you're going to calculate that based on the formula here in the right-hand column, finding the average, then multiplying it by the multiplier here for weekly 4.33, etc. You'll do this for both earned and unearned income, total it up to get their total income and ensure that it's under 200% of the federal poverty level. And I believe this is, this is the last eligibility discussion topic, but when, for those of you who participated in year one, you are definitely looking at redetermining families and making sure that they are continuing care for those who were not 3 years old, turning 4 years old this year. This is a reminder that they are eligible from last year through 12 months from their initial application date. So for example, if a family was certified last year on November 13th, they are certified through November 13th of 2021. And you should ask them for updated eligibility documents by October 13th so that they have a full 30 days in order to get those documents back to you. You can ask further in advance, of course, but our recommended date is at least 30 days. Also example, if a family is certified today on July 13th, 2021, they're certified all the way through next year of 2022. And you should ask them for updated eligibility documents by next June 2022. And then if you are ever concerned about eligibility or uncertain about a situation or applying some of these rules to a real life scenario, please reach out to me either via email or call me. If I can't answer right away, I will certainly get back to you. And I know I've already done a few real life examples with some of you, both from last year and from this year. And I want to ensure that you all feel supported in making these decisions because sometimes it can be tricky and you're not alone. So that being said, are there any additional eligibility questions that I have not yet addressed that you'd either like to pose to me or to the rest of the group based on anything I already talked about or anything that you've come across yet that that might be new? All right, I'm not hearing anything and that's okay. So we're gonna move on to the next section.
Devin.
Oh,
Hey, it's Carmen. I'm sorry.
hey.
I need to hear her there. It's okay. I'll do it here. I'm listening with a partner, so.
Oh, that's good. Yeah, I heard you echo
figure
for
our
2
volume
seconds.
stuff
It was
out.
very cool.
Okay.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay. Question. Like I had one this morning. The mother just had a baby, so she doesn't work, but the daddy works.
Okay.
She can use the statement of no income or not?
She can use a statement of no income. She should, though, apply as actively seeking employment.
So they have to do that no matter what.
Mhm.
Okay. What about a person shouldn't have to do the hire account, correct?
Say that again, you cut out a little bit.
A disabled person shouldn't have to use the hire account, correct? Because they're disabled. Can they use their disability?
Incorrect. If a person, so unless a person has documentation from a hospital or doctor stating that their disability impedes them from being able to work at all, which they might have, they can submit that along with their eligibility documentation, and that would exempt
They have to
them.
have a note from the doctor that says they can't work at all.
Correct, because most now, again, I'm not a doctor, I'm not a disability expert, but from my experience in eligibility, most families or most people who have that, who receive disability, receive it with the, it is not a supplanting, it's supplementing, that there's like that key phrase, it's supplementing additional income that they might not be able to incur because of the disability, but it is not meant to supplant income, meaning that they are still capable of maintaining a job in some way, again, unless they are exempt. It's actually in Bulletin 137 that specifically states that unless like explicitly deemed unable to work by a doctor, they still must meet the eligibility requirements of either in training, actively seeking employment, or fully employed.
Gotcha.
Or that minimum of 20 hours a week.
We've had this scenario a couple of times today. Single moms, they get SNAP benefits, but their income may be just a little bit over their check stubs that they send us, just a tiny bit over the income limit, they're still not qualified, right?
Correct. Unfortunately,
'Cause they are
that
not
dollar
happy.
amount. Yeah,
They don't
unfortunately, the
qualify
dollar
for
amount.
CCAP.
Mhm.
And so I got an earful, and I told her I would be sure to mention that to the state today.
Yeah, I understand. So I think the line that I might suggest that you use with families like that, especially for families who do make, I want to say inconsistent, but like if they're not paid, or if their work hours are not consistent every single week, for example, like a salaried person, most of us on this call will get the same paycheck every week, whether we worked overtime or whether we worked like the bare minimum hours, et cetera. However, for families who work more flexible hours, who work, they have a couple of really high weeks in the summer of their, they got a lot of shifts and they got some bonus time, they got holiday pay, et cetera. For families who are working jobs like that, you can say, all right, let's take a look at your pay statements. Is this is this always true for you? Or are you sometimes earning less than this? Come back to me in 2 to 3 weeks if you're with new pay statements that may be less than this, so that you can provide qualifying pay statements. Again, I would never encourage a person to work less just to qualify for the care. But I know, especially in the summertime, a lot of seasonal work spikes upward, especially in holiday time, seasonal work spikes upward. So sometimes the pay statements that they most recently have are great, but not necessarily the most reflective of their year-long work.
And they cannot qualify merely on SNAP, correct?
Correct.
All right, I have I think just one more. We wrote them down. Grandma
Okay.
has custody
Uh-huh.
and she lives on Social Security benefits.
Okay.
Does she have to go to the higher?
If her Social Security benefits state that she is unable to work, or like if that is supplanting her employment, which I'm not an expert on what these documents say, but in my experience, I have not seen it say that. So she may have to, if it doesn't say that explicitly, then yes, she would still need to meet the either actively seeking employment, or school or training.
Okay, and last question I had, on the eligibility sheet for the B-3, it says to get their residential information. Do we have to get proof of residency?
Yes, to prove that they're Louisiana residents, yes.
Okay, and does it have to be 2 proofs of residency? What does it say?
Just one.
Just one, so their driver's license, no, they have to get a utility or something?
Driver's license is sufficient.
Okay, all right, perfect.
Mhm. Lola, I saw that you had a hand raised. You can pop off mute and ask your question.
It was like the question in the chat asking about if they qualify simply by having SNAP benefits. You answered it already.
Okay, great. And I see that Lizzie answered a question from Emmy. The deadline for PDG funding is 12/30. Yep. How do they qualify for SNAP but not PDG from an income perspective? Yeah, I'm not quite sure about that. Sarintha, that's a good point. So Carmen, if they do qualify for SNAP, technically that, unless something's changed in the last couple of days that I'm not aware of, SNAP benefits, the income requirement is 200% federal poverty level. So if that particular family is qualifying for SNAP, she should be able to qualify for the birth to 3 seats. It may be, like I mentioned earlier, that her most recent pay statements are like really high because of summer pay. So that might be the reason why in looking through your initial look through today, it didn't appear that she qualified. And then Teresa's question in the chat box, do families have to live in the parish that the seats are? No, they don't. As long as they're residents of the state of Louisiana, then they qualify. So for example, we know that people commute. They may live in a parish surrounding New Orleans and want to have their care near their work, and they live in Baton Rouge, but they want to have childcare in New Orleans, that is perfectly allowable. All right, any other questions about eligibility right now? We will have time at the end for some more discussion. So if a question is on the tip of your tongue, but you're not quite sure how to ask it yet, we'll definitely have time. All right, hearing none, we're going to talk now about the attendance trackers. So after this webinar, I will be sharing with you your individual attendance tracker that have been designed and built for you. And I'm going to go through some screenshots here of what that will look like. The first thing to know is that there's a tab called instructions on the bottom of each of these trackers. They're set up in Google Sheets. So being able to look at the bottom, see at the bottom, it'll say information, then each subsequent month where you'll be entering your attendance. So in that instructions form, you're going to see the instructions that I'm going to go over today, both for capturing attendance and setting up the form. You're also going to see this calculator with the explicit ranges for each birth date and what group that falls under. If you're not sure about a child's age or which age group, you can enter their date here in the green box, and in the yellow box it'll pop up which age group they qualify under. So for your attendance reporting, this is an example. The first thing you're going to do is select your network. When you do that, you will see several things change, like your zone, the total allocation amount over here in the corner, that's by month. And it will change and it'll help show over here the amount that is estimated to be allocated. Now, I will say that these estimates are based on the Louisiana Department of Education's numbers that we use to determine your allocations. It's not based on the number, like the specific dollar amount that you assigned in your planning documents. So just be aware of that going in. The next thing that you'll do after you select your network, you'll go through and make sure that there's a C with the grayed out box for any date that your center or your network was closed. Most of those weekend dates are already closed, but it's good to double check, or excuse me, already marked, but it's good to double check, as well as making sure that you go through and select any holidays, or if for whatever reason there was a closure due to weather or due to something unexpected, going in to make sure that those are closed. And then the next thing that you'll do is choose the site by license number in the far column on the left. When you do that, the center name will automatically pop up. And you should then be able to enter in the children's information, which I'm going to go over on the next page. So on the next step, you're going to enter just the first initial of the first name, the first two initials of the last name for the child, making sure that you diligently do that, because we don't want to, share private information of our children. Some of you may have LISIDs for your children. If not, don't worry about it, leave it blank. After you enter the child's information, and make sure that their age group is accurately selected, then you're going to input their attendance. So you can see there's either a 1 for present or a 0 for absent. For our purposes, we're not interested in whether it was an excused or unexcused absence. We just want to see if they were there or if they weren't there. And you'll also see these little dashes here. That's what automatically pops up if there is no attendance marked. And you'll leave those for days that a child was not enrolled. So for example, if we look here at MSW, they didn't start school, or they didn't start in this month until the 8th day. They didn't come at all on this day, and that needs to be changed to 0s for absent. If we look here for child BMC, they were present the first full week, the second full week, were absent on the 18th, and attended 21 days. So also over here, you can see the days, they attended 20 days out of the 21, excuse me. The days open is in that first column and the days attended is in that right column. And that'll be useful for those of you who have the attendance minimums that are either aligned with LA4, with CCAP, or that some of you have added your own. And that will be useful for you in order to make sure that you are maintaining equity for those children. So lastly, once you've confirmed that you've gotten all your children in, you've accurately completed the information, you're going to add your digital signature here for the authorized network personnel. You're going to put the date that it was completed. And then you're going to click the submit button here, and that will automatically send an email to me to let me know that the attendance is complete. Attendance is due by the 10th of the subsequent month. So for example, August attendance is due on September 10th. That's also in alignment with LA4, so you should be able to complete those in tandem. And oops, that is my last bit of information about the attendance tracker. Again, I'm going to share your individual trackers with you this afternoon. But before I move on, does anybody have any questions about keeping track of attendance for birth to 3 seats?
Hi, Devin.
Hi.
This is Cassandra. Have a quick question. Last year, Amy, she was the holder of the attendance.
Yep.
And she went on maternity leave, so she had to give me the torch. How many people will you allow to have access to this document?
That's a great question. I think you and your team and I can discuss. It is not a matter of how many is too many, other than, you know, what your network requires, because we know that people like Amy get wonderful life events and have to leave for some time. So I think if you have, when I send you an email this afternoon, you just let me know who you would like to have access to this, and we'll make sure that those people do.
Okay, thanks.
Mhm.
Devin, this is Michelle.
Hey, Michelle, how are you?
Hi, I'm great, Miss Devin. So nice to hear your voice. When you were talking about attendance minimums, are you talking about that was listed in their MOU with the child cares?
Yeah, some networks decided to implement an attendance minimum aligned with LA4 or aligned with CCAP. It is not required by us at the department. Some people just wanted to keep consistency across the board. Some people wanted to have a bottom line because of super high demand to make sure that the seats are being utilized. If there is no, I'll say that there's no need for us at the department other than in your planning documents if you want to implement that. As far as the attendance tracker goes, anybody who has an attendance minimum doesn't need to do anything to adjust the attendance tracker. And if you are interested in an attendance minimum, Michelle, you know, we can talk more about that, but it's definitely not mandatory. Any other questions about attendance tracking? Awesome. Hearing none, we're moving into our last section of the day, best practices from the planning documents. So before I move in, we will be sending out your planning documents with feedback this afternoon. Thank you so much for your patience as we took a lot of time to review and think really critically about the hard work you put into them. We have learned a lot about the wonderful things that are going on across the state and the wonderful things you intend to implement soon through this funding. And we wanted to pull out a few best practices that we noticed in the review that we think would be great for everybody on this call to hear. Because one thing that I really want to make sure is true about this group of networks this year is that we're all continuously learning from each other, that we are, you know, the old teacher saying beg, borrowing, and stealing from each other for the betterment of children. So I'm going to get into those. Some best practices about this pilot involved making sure that there's a thoughtful inclusion about teacher pay and benefits. with your program partner assurances, including things like stipends, incentives, and minimum pay or benefits requirements. Here are two examples from either from Iberville's partnership agreement and Tangipahoa's budget. Tangipahoa included a ratio bonus to compensate for that 8-to-1 child to teacher ratio, paying an additional $6,000 to individual centers to make up for the fact that there are definitely going to be smaller ratios for this classroom of children. Iberville, as you can see, is requesting every center to give Lydia in Iberville the employment agreements, detailing the salary or hourly rate and payment terms for teachers teaching at that center, so that she can make sure that they are being paid at an equitable level to their peers across the state, across the parish. And we have a couple other ones for teacher pay here. You can see Tangipahoa again is adding some additional observation incentives. Lincoln has addressed reimbursements for teacher retention, so teachers getting additional pay every quarter that they remain in their job. St. Landry also added several different lines about how to financially support the teachers supporting birth to 3 seat children, with some really clear math to show how she made those calculations. So this is my last slide about teacher pay specifically, but I would definitely encourage you guys to think really critically, if you have not included something about teacher pay, what you can do to either add in additional incentives for your teachers, or ensure that the teachers who are participating in B-3 seat care are being, valued or feeling seen and heard and valued, not only through, their internal professional development at the center, but through you at the lead agency. Some other best practices around family engagement. St. Charles really stood out as including practices to connect with families regularly, such as satisfaction surveys, parenting classes, and community gatherings, and offering a parent incentive stipend to participate in those monthly engagement sessions. So thinking too about how you can really utilize some of these funds to engage with families in a way that you may not be able to through other funding sources. As I mentioned, you'll be receiving planning document feedback this afternoon. There's a couple of directions to note. So if your planning document has been saved and returned with the name Review Complete in the title, you have no additional action needed. You may choose to reply to any of the comments through either Google Docs or emailed back to me. However, it's not required. Every single person, every single planning document has comments on it. So, I want you all to know that I was really digging deep into your documents. I have a lot of food for thought questions. Just because there's a question in there doesn't mean something is wrong. I just want to continue to push your thinking. If your planning document has been saved as action required in the title, there's something in that document there's a comment titled action required, and that must be responded to by July 31st. And any additional comments without that title can be responded to, however, it's not required. The action required ones are the most important. And this is another best practice. This is for the whole group, and I wanted to talk about the feedback first, just so that we didn't lose it. But competitive rates are very clearly, that's what we based the allocations on, of making sure that we're thinking critically at the department level, at the state level, what our rates are for children, what we're paying centers, how much we're paying centers means, both at the parish level, at the state level, et cetera. And as you know, we looked at our CCAP rates, the market rate survey, adding in the school readiness tax credits to be able to fully come up with the allocations that you received back in April, May. You all get to decide and set the rates that you're paying your centers, because you know your community best, you know the centers best, And you are also using these funds for more than just direct care for children. You're using it for teacher stipends, you're using it for professional development, you're funding classrooms with all new curriculum or all new furniture. So that's why there's variance in the rates that we see here. But what I did in this table is I took the average rate from what you all provided me in the planning documents for zone 1 and zone 2 and compared it to the CCAP rates. We can see that they're quite close at every level. You can see that our rates and at the average for birth to 3 are higher, with the exception of zone 2 infants. The average is a little bit lower than the CCAP rate. And I wanted to just point out here that there are networks that are above or at the CCAP rate. There are about 9 that consistently at every age group level, 9 networks have a higher than the CCAP rate that they're reimbursing centers. There are 4 networks that at 1 or more of their age group rates are just below the CCAP rate. And there are 9 networks that have significantly lower rates than the CCAP rate for 1 or more of their age ranges. This is not necessarily, this is not me telling you that you need to change your rates. This is not me telling you that something is wrong, but I just want to put this into context for you to make sure that we're thinking about whether or not these the rates that you're paying your centers are sustainable for your centers, if they're attractive to centers. We want them to want to participate and we want them to want to partner with you. So I think that this slide gives us some good context about where we're landing in the world of publicly funded seats in Louisiana. Okay, so that's our talk about best practices. And this is our second to last slide because I do think, Lizzie, can you hop off the mute and let me know if you think we have time for our breakout rooms?
I mean, it would be about a 10-minute discussion, so I do think we have time for breakouts.
Great, thank you so much. My inbox keeps beeping at me for some reason, my Outlook, so I'm closing that so it doesn't distract me anymore. But what we're going to do is I have these questions set up here, and I would love to give you guys just that last 10 minutes to talk with each other about where you're standing with your birth to 3 seats life, what questions you have for each other about recruitment and enrollment, what component of eligibility determination are you most confident in, are you most struggling with, what are you thinking about in terms of eGMS and your budgets, etc. So Lizzie, I think, is going to put us into some breakout rooms. And I will give you a warning. We'll do 8 minutes, I think, and then I'll give you a 2-minute warning about when we are going to come back together.
All right, I'm about to send everybody to a breakout room. It looks like I'm going to drop the questions in the chat box.
Thanks, Lizzie.
All right, here we go. All right, not sure if y'all can hear me, Dinez or Leslie, but you should have been invited to a breakout room. And if so, you'll need to click join room.
All right, it looks like there's 4 rooms too, Lizzie. I'm gonna pop into each one for a few minutes.
Sure.
Okay, I'll start at 4. Do you want to start at 1?
I think I need to stay in here in case.
Okay, in case
people
it
bug-
doesn't.
But yeah, but there's LDOE people in everyone.
Okay, perfect. Oh, great.
Except
Perfect.
2. There's not. Someone must have left, so there's not an LDOE person in 2. If you want to go there,
I'll
first.
start with 2. Thanks, Lizzie. Hey, everybody. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt the conversation. What were y'all talking about?
Recruitment.
Cool.
Cindy, I'll just tell you what we did whenever we have pre-K registration and Head Start registration. We collect information from any families who come, have younger siblings and are interested in childcare. And we know pretty much that the families who are there will meet these guidelines. So that's what we did last year, and we filled all our spots and even had more people, to put in the spots, and had, those names right on hand, and we reached out to them. We didn't even have to advertise the seats. And so we did the same thing again this year, and we're making our way through the list and filling our seats again. So I know you have Head Start and meet those same poverty guidelines. So that's how we did it, and we're able to fill the seats really quickly. I don't think it's anything out of the box, but it was a quick way.
Did y'all have, did you do enrollment this year online, or did you do it face to face?
They actually were scheduling individual appointments with parents.
Okay.
So they called, made an appointment, and then came in.
Okay.
We did our enrollment. I'm sorry. Yeah. Hi, Angela. We did our enrollment online and face-to-face, but we did the face-to-face by appointment. And one thing that we did that we found was successful for our other enrollment events was we are sending out flyers to all of our residents in Natchitoches, and that really helped. It's kind of expensive, but I think it's worth it because we are getting the word out, because we don't have, the only thing that we have would be the newspaper and the radio. We don't have a television, and it's kind of hard for us to do a billboard. So we found that the flyers really helped to boost our enrollment in Natchitoches Parish.
Yeah, I didn't have anything to add. I was just saying we did our registration, our application online. But we do have offer, some in-person assistance as well. So we want to do the next question, or did anybody else?
I think we can move on.
Okay. The component of eligibility determination that's most difficult to apply in real life situations. So I think a lot of the questions were asked today, and I'm not sure who was asking, but those were a lot of the same questions I had last year that I came across. So some of that work, school, or actively seeking work.
For me, I'm thinking more or less, I have to get in my mind that LA4 and B-3 seats are totally different. Well, they have similarities, but they're different. And so I can't treat it like LA4. I have to treat it like B-3.